Throughout the 70s, foosball, or table football, was a multi-million-dollar industry, with professional players traveling all across America, winning Porsches, massive cash prizes, and getting the ladies. But then the money dried up. Celebrity foosball players had to go get day jobs, major manufacturers went bust, and just like that, it was over. In today's video, we will explore how the hell this all happened.
The game we now know as foosball, popular around the world, one local...
Home some of the $100,000 in cash.
Does so beautifully and it hammers the full kick home.
In the early 1900s, table football was this game that you would find being played in cafes, pubs, and parlours. And it was pretty much exclusive to Europe, where the sport of football, like actual big boy football, was super popular. But it would take one man by the name of Lewis P. Thornton. On paying his cousin a visit, he saw this weird game of table football. And he thought, it's money time, baby. He raced back to America and patented the game in 1927. And then it completely flopped. And his patent for the game eventually expired, and the game quietly slipped back into obscurity. At least, that was what happened in America. You see, in Europe, and places surrounding it, it was relatively popular. And then, everyone started to kick off. And World War II happened, which I'm gonna guess you've heard about. But anyway, as the West slowly recovered from nearly destroying itself, American troops were sent to Germany to help guard against the tensions that were rising with the Soviets in Eastern Germany. But one of these troops was a man by the name of Larry Patterson. Your boy Larry was one day just out patrolling the streets with a gun, and he heard this room of people cheering and yelling while circled around this small table. Larry entered, wanting to find out what was going on, and as he got closer, he saw what they were circled around, and that was a money printing machine. Or at least that's how Larry saw it. Larry's eyes lit up when he saw this small game that people were obsessing over. And in 1962, his first table would arrive in America. And immediately, Larry trademarked the name Foosball. And he would call his table Foosball Match. But you see, Larry had his work cut out for him. It wasn't going to be easy. This has been tried before and it failed. But Larry had a good idea. And that was to market his game for arcades, alongside other coin-based machines like pinball. And Larry started to sell some tables, but sales weren't like amazing. And he would take out ads in these major publications, such as Life magazine, Esquire, and the Wall Street Journal. And he would also put out the very first Foos News magazine. And then the 70s would happen. The hippies were out and disco was in. And this would be the decade that would completely change everything for the humble game of foosball. Before we go any further, I want to give a massive shout out to Soundcore for sponsoring today's video. Soundcore very kindly sent me over their Liberty Free Pro model. I can say hands down this is the best pair of in-ear headphones I've ever used. I don't know how I was living before with them wired headphones. You like turn your head and you almost get decapitated. The Liberty Free Pro uses a revolutionary and patented technology exclusively developed by Soundcore called ACAA 2.0. It's able to create like a super wide soundscape that's detailed and spacious sounding. You'll find that a lot of in-ear headphones tend to overcompensate with like bass. But honestly, these just get it perfect and the sound is super crisp. Another thing I can't live without now is the noise cancelling of these headphones. Using the unique Hear ID technology, the noise cancelling algorithm adapts to the environment that you're in, delivering you the perfect noise cancellation, which I found to be an absolute game changer when I'm editing videos. I can be in like a busy cafe, I could be on a train, or anywhere really, and I won't get distracted and snapped out of what I'm doing. The Liberty Free Pro has up to 32 hours of playtime. It comes in 4 different colours, they look good, they sound good, and they're super convenient. So be sure to get yours by checking the link pinned in the top comment and the description. Anyway, back to the video. Up until the 70s, all of the tables were being imported from Europe. You had the German tables, Deutsche Meister und Leonhard. You had the Italian Galando and the French René Pierre. But then a man named Bob decided to make the first ever American table, introducing to the world Texas-style table soccer. Being the first of what would become the dominant brand, Tornado. Now with a US manufactured table, the stage was set for foosball to take over America. And between 1972 and 74, foosball just blew up. It was the beginning of a fad. Loads of people would flock to arcades and pubs to play table football, foosball. And one of those people was a man named Lee Peppard. Lee instantly had a vision for for the future of foosball. He saw what in his mind could become a massive sport, and around 1972, Lee ran his first ever big table soccer tournament, which he hosted at his tavern in Missoula, Montana, with a prize of $1,500 to win a game of foosball. And the event was a massive success. And in May of 1973, Lee followed it up with a $5,000 tournament. Again, a massive success. People loved it. And it was around this time where Lee decided it was time for him to make his own table. And he did just that, under the name Tournament Soccer. Tournament Soccer were the Nike of foosball. And the success of these events in Montana had Lee realizing that this was the way to market his product, through offering insane amounts of money to play in tournaments. Who'd have guessed? But honestly, these cash prizes were peanuts compared to what was to come. 1 year later, May 1974, Lee and his company, Tournament Soccer, put on their very first $50,000 international championships. Which sounds a lot as $50,000, but you gotta consider this was in the 70s. If we adjust for inflation today, that's around $352,000. Again, I must stress, to play a game of foosball. This event was hosted at Denver, Colorado, at Elitch Gardens. This one tournament would be the start of an era of professional foosball players. Lee Peppard was a maniac. I don't mean that in a nasty way. I mean, like, this guy was throwing ridiculous sums of money at this thing. He went and upped the ante even further by hosting the very first $250,000 pro table soccer tour, spanning across 34 cities of America. Meaning that across these 34 cities, there was prizes at every competition. It wasn't just one big $250,000 pot, it was split between them. And what this did was make it possible for pros to live off of foosball. If they traveled to every competition and they came first or runners up or even mid to bottom, they could make some money. And they could afford to go to the next town and play again and maybe get lucky and win big. These tours were legendary. This was truly the golden era of foosball. People still talk about moments from these tours today, as they would create this culture of like vagabond foosball players who would drop everything, buy a van and travel around America to win money at these competitions. And somehow, from 1975 onwards, it managed to somehow get even crazier. In '76, Tournament Soccer upped the prize money to $375,000, and loads of other smaller competitions that year, but still giving out reasonable sums of money. And then in '77, Tournament Soccer decided to put out $500,000 as they toured across America with their new blue top table. And as you can imagine, with all this money being thrown around, you would make some pretty wealthy foosball players.
And stroking it home to the far side. That is impressive stuff.
Every single year from 1975 onward, Tournament Soccer kept increasing the prize pool. And these tours would cross from like East to West Coast America, being hosted in like luxury ballrooms or first-class hotels. And the players were living like stars.
There were TV cameras waiting for you when you got off the plane.
You guys are going to be jealous now. The lovely Hilton here in Oshkosh has provided the foosball players with a real nice place to relax, beautiful hot tub, jacuzzi.
And in 1977, Tournament Soccer would announce their $1 million tour. The tour would span 18 months and hit 40 different cities. Obviously, that 1 million was split up across those tournaments. There were 15 10 grand tournaments, 2 25 grand tournaments, 2 100 grand tournaments, and 1 $250,000 world championship. And these competitions wouldn't only pay the winner, or even second or third place. You could win reasonable money playing crap. Okay, I say crap. I mean, like, you could come 13th and still make $1,000 odd. And because of this, you would have these elite level foosball players touring the country and making a legit living off of foosball. Most notably, the two icons, Doug Fury and Jim Wiswell, being like the most famous doubles partners and top seeded players. As well, you would have players like Mike Bowers, Tony Bacon, and the legend Todd Lafredo, who is still playing to this day. And like, society didn't laugh at them. These people were seen as like celebrity sportsmen. They were making serious bank, winning Porsches, Corvettes, literally having Playboy bunnies wrap themselves around them, all for playing a game which was literally tabletop football. Now, to be honest, saying that doesn't do it justice. The skill level of foosball was insane. Not only their reflexes, but like the strategy. It was like boxing mixed with chess.
And that's in the upper Midwest part of the United States.
I know you want to know about money. Who made the most? Well, from 1975 to 1980, the top 3 people who made the most money were Doug Fury, who made $85,000, Dan Krazer, who made $77,500, and Jim Wiswell, who made $69,200, which the today's equivalent is kind of hard to work out because even from 1975 to 1980, the inflation would change a lot. But this was roughly somewhere between $300,000 to $500,000. And considering these lot were like 20 years old, they were making a good part of $500,000 playing foosball. And as you can probably imagine, the sensation, the phenomena that was foosball would spread all across America. Everyone wanted a piece of the pie. Every arcade and every bar, as they call it, they don't call it pub for some reason, would have crowded foosball tables. The complete book of foosball was published by Contemporary Books, who were the world's largest sport book publisher. There was the token cash grab movie called Long Shot.
Whether you're whoever, just came here to wish you luck.
And to tell you we're gonna kick your asses.
Which was a feature-length film all about becoming a professional foosballer. Foosball was in full sensation mode, and it was sweeping all across America. And then it all started to go downhill very fast. And that was due to the invention of one game. During the large part of the 70s, most of these arcade games were mechanical. Put a coin in, you pull a lever, you flick a thing, and it does a thing, and stuff happens. But then in the late 70s to early 80s, a new fad was bubbling up. Computer arcade games. Games like Pac-Man, Space Invader, Asteroids. These revolutionary new computer games were starting to sweep across the younger generation. And so let's pretend that you are an arcade owner. You have a choice to make. Either you keep your foosball table that makes you about $100 a week, costs a ton to maintain and takes up a load of space, or you buy a brand new shiny Pac-Man machine, which requires far less maintenance and makes you about $600 a week. The choice was obvious. And in literally 1 week, in 1980, table soccer's sales went down from 1,000 tables a week to 100 tables. Like pretty much overnight. And what's worse is that the attendance for all these competitions they were putting on was starting to decline. The bubble was beginning to pop for foosball. But then Lee Peppard, the guy that's pretty much to thank for foosball's success, had an idea to save foosball. In 1981, he hosted Tournament Soccer's $400,000 tournament. But what was different is that he decided to do it alongside Atari. Atari being the manufacturer of many of these games. The idea being that they should work together with this new industry and bring them all in and work together. This event was set to be massive. Tournament Soccer invested a ton of money into it, and so they prepared to open the doors to thousands of people to take part in this tournament. And then, like, 200 people showed up. And later on, in the same year, in 1981, Tournament Soccer filed for bankruptcy. The biggest manufacturer, like literally the Nike of foosball, in like 1 year had gone from the top of their game to bankrupt. And what's even worse is in that same year, the legend Jim Wiswell tragically took his own life. The morale of the foosball community was at an all-time low. The roaring highs of the mid to late 70s were no more. However, they tried to hang in there. ESPN and their show Ocho would begin broadcasting matches of foosball. And with Tournament Soccer being the market leaders, having had to file for bankruptcy, what little was left of the foosball industry would be battled for by 2 manufacturers, Dynamo and Tornado. And you know, they would keep hosting tournaments, $30,000 here, $80,000 there. But for many of the pros from the 70s, they realized the ride was up. It was time to get a normal job. From here, foosball would largely go underground. And yeah, some of the more die-hard players would continue to play. They would try and push foosball and bring new generations through the ranks. In 1992, a man by the name of Terry Moore would come along and revolutionize foosball with the invention of the snake technique. I think that's what it's called. A lot of people have different names for it. Being a skill that was technically legal. Basically, the rules state you can't fully spin a player more than 360 degrees. But under 360 degrees was fair game. This new technique was closer to like 340 degrees, so it was technically legal. But unfortunately, by 1996, ESPN would stop airing games of foosball. And foosball has never truly recovered. From then until now, yeah, there's been a few competitions, and some have given away some big amounts of money. But with the hype being completely dead and no sponsors wanting to invest into foosball, people like the IFP have to host competitions funded by the players, so they have to pay a good amount of money to take part. And some of the prize pots are okay, but they're usually like $3,000, maybe $15,000 if you're lucky. And if you just think about that logistically, if you've got to go to these competitions, pay to enter, pay for your flights, your hotel, your food, most people taking part aren't even going to break even. If you look at this article from ESPN, they paint a pretty depressing picture for professional foosball players. It says here that Brandon Moreland has made about $60,000 to $70,000 from foosball, which sounds good, but that took him 10 years to make and cost him the best part of $30,000 to $40,000 to make it. 20K over 10 years isn't good money. You make more stacking shelves. There are a few exceptions who are making some money. The old school legend Tom Lafredo is still kicking about and making a living. The #1 American, Tony Spreedman, makes a pretty reasonable living.
Tony steps into the forward position, passes it, drills the ball kick.
But honestly, modern foosball just isn't anywhere near what it used to be. There's a great documentary called Foosballers that I'd really recommend you watching. I got a lot of my information from that, and it paints the honest truth of what it's like these days. I do hear that it is more popular in Europe. I'm not sure about the money side, it was very hard to find any information on it. But for instance, if you go to Prague and you go to one of the many foosball pubs that there are, play a game with the locals and you'll get your arse absolutely handed to you. But as for my opinion on the current state of foosball, which I'm definitely not qualified to have any opinion on, I do think they're missing a trick with social media. Like even most of their websites that like MySpace pages. Almost none of these professionals have Instagram or YouTube or anything like that. But there seems to be at least a bit of an appetite for it because some of the games get tons of views. So I don't know, maybe if someone stepped up and filled that kind of social media void, perhaps it would become more popular. Foosball is super fun, and me and my friends were talking about this the other day. It's actually really hard to find anywhere that has a foosball table, at least in England. And if there were more, I definitely would play it. But let me know in the comments what you think. So all I can say to the world of foosball is good luck. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. You can support me by picking up some merch on jimmythegiant.co.uk or by donating to me on Patreon or using the sponsored link below. Peace.